With the push to a lot more remote meetings, distance environment, um, I recently did a video about just some basics of how to do that well. Um, in the last few months, seen a lot more variety of people doing it, and people are learning quickly, and there's a lot of trade-offs. And as tools evolve, some more options become available. I want to talk about a few things, and we kind of start basic and get a little bit more advanced as we go down. But the first one is the use of the camera. Sometimes if you're in a virtual meeting, regardless of the tool, some people will choose to turn on their camera or not. And obviously a personal choice. If you're doing other things while the meeting's going on, probably safer to have your video off so people know you haven't disappeared, but you're still listening. They won't know if you have just a photo shown. So you may want to individually turn that off. But if you're speaking, I've seen people do it without, but if you're speaking to the group and you don't have your video on, it's easy to get distracted. They can't see your facial expressions, other things. So I think if you're going to be talking, you should have them on. But I think just for social connection, I think it's vital to do your best to always turn your video on. Prepare for online meeting just like you would an in-person meeting. Do your hair, put on nice clothes, do everything you need to make them realize it's a professional and important event. Um, However, there's certainly cases, if it's a huge gathering, if it's hundreds of people, or even more than 30, you're not going to be able to see all the cameras, and it's almost frustrating trying to find a person that you're curious about or whatever. And as a leader of a group, you may just automatically turn off the cameras for everyone unless you've authorized them individually. So that's a big choice. There's advantages and disadvantages either way. And I'm not trying to coach one way or the other of how to always do things. It's all situational. The use of the mute button. If it's a small group, keeping on your microphone all the time can be acceptable. But it doesn't take very many people for there to be distractive noises in the background. So I encourage you, particularly in larger groups, to keep the mute button on. If you want to talk, unmute, make some noise so your camera gets to the front of the queue, and be ready to talk. And as a leader, recognize if someone's unmuted, because if everyone's muted but two people, the person talking and someone else, they may have a question or comment to add. So I think it's essential that a leader recognize that. But for small groups, it takes time to go over, unmute, and then jump into the conversation. Keeping it on, if it's a very interactive thing, can be okay. But that's got to be a pretty small group. I would say 3 people. 3, maybe 4, you can get away with that. The chat feature. I've seen the meetings set up a variety of ways that way as well. I think the chat dialogue, at least for a smaller group, is good and healthy, where you can chat not just to the presenter, but to any individual within the room. If it's people that you know and there's 20, 30 people there, if you haven't seen Dave for a while, you can make a note to him, or if you haven't seen Becky for a while, make a note, hey, good seeing you again, hope you're doing well. Hey, we should catch up offline. Again, if it's hundreds of people, the chat feature is going to be just chaos and hard to keep up with. But if it's only to the moderator, not to the team in a small group, you're kind of, I mean, one of the values of a small group is to have some interaction. And turning off the chat feature for individuals to individuals cuts down on some of the networking and some of the interaction you might have. I just have my notes here to make sure that I get the details. There's also the Q&A function, and that's a great place to kind of moderate specific questions versus just chatter within the room. So if you have a Q&A feature on your software, that can be for questions to presenter, the chat just be within the room. It's obviously hard to pull out questions from chat for the presenter if they're all going on at the same time. So I can kind of see controlling some of the individual chat. Breakout rooms. Some software has that ability to break into small groups. So you have a big talk, you break down into individual or to smaller teams. Those sizes, I think 4 to 5 works well. I've seen bigger, and that gets a little bit like people talking over, and it doesn't work. You can't talk over someone, but if people are trying to, very inefficient. You always need a little bit of time to introduce yourselves. That cuts into your time. They can also be kind of like randomly set groups or prescribed groups. And I think a prescribed group is probably better, just so you know who's going where and you can re-put them back with each other instead of kind of randomly doing that. So let them know who's there and make sure and have a leader and someone basically, and I think the leader and the note taker can be the same person. Splitting that up takes too much time sometimes. But again, keeping it fairly small and having a set list that you break into, particularly if you do it multiple times, will help that. But can be cumbersome, so make sure that you organize that early. And if people no-show, you just got to have a strategy for of reassembling groups really quickly. Last thing is polls that can be used. Sometimes just to have engagement with the group, the presenter will do little polls that flash up on the screen, which is really neat. But then once you vote and submit, maybe you see the results, but maybe there's more to the question. Or the survey happens and they close the results and they keep talking about the results. I've seen presenters have a slide of the poll questions so it basically mimics it. So if the poll results gets closed, you can still see that. And if you're watching offline later, if it's recorded, you can see it logger and monitor that. And I think sometimes too, the polls, depending on how they're set up, it seems like the presenters can see it sometimes longer than the participants can. So make sure and review those results with the participants, because to participate in a poll and to not talk about, not the details of it, but this one was this percent, this one was that percent. If you don't hear that feedback of how things ended up and do it slowly enough where people can follow it, if you don't do that and they don't know what the results are, that engagement to participate in the next poll goes down. They know it has for me. If I don't see the prior results, the next poll, I may go get a glass of water or do something else. So give them the results, have the questions you ask on a slide that they can see, and then when the results screen goes away, you can discuss it and move on. And it's a great engagement tool when it's used well. And so I think those are the little points that I want to make to help kind of take you to the next level for your virtual meetings. Again, virtual has its place, in-person has its place, but when you're doing virtual, doing these things well can help the social connection, can help the engagement in general between the team and between the participants and the presenter. If you want help organizing these types of communications, meetings, making decisions effectively, call us here at Prairie Solutions. We'd love to help you become more efficient, more productive, meet your team objectives.